This week, the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services launched COVID-19 screenings at the Johannesburg Central Prison. Newzroom Afrika's Sindisiwe Twala filed this report.
Government is not taking any chances as screening is enforced at the Johannesburg Correctional Center before prisoners and warders enter. To date, 16,000 inmates have already been screened. Lamula says screening is in response to the East London warder who tested positive for the coronavirus.
We are doing our best to ensure that she is given all the support that she needs, and she's in hospital. But also we are trying to locate the kid, because you know the warders, they stay in our facilities. But when she realized she might be getting sick, she had to take the kid to a home. So we have to locate also the kid, including the mother, to check whether is she not affected by that. And we are very grateful that the government of the Eastern Cape is helping us in that regard.
In the same breath, overcrowding in the facility remains an issue.
36% overcrowding. But you will know, when you speak about overcrowding at 36%, it's an average figure at the national level. But centers like this, which are big, it's not 36%. It's almost double the number of what is expected in the kind of center like this one.
Lucille, a prisoner who has been incarcerated for 6 years, says communal cells have been a challenge.
The social distancing is a challenge, but we have managed to, where we are 5 cells in our whole section, we don't mix between each other anymore. Where we would normally sit 4 or 5 of us on a bed and have coffee together, we don't. You sit on your own bed and you have coffee and you just speak to people from a distance. Before, we would also be 120 in the kitchen in the morning for breakfast. We would all sit as a unit. We do not anymore. We do go down as cells individually, and only 5 go into the kitchen and dish at a time. We have markers where you stay a metre away from each other. So yes, social distancing, we have managed to control it to a certain degree in our centre.
Post-screening, swabs of those prisoners suspected will be taken to labs for testing. In the meantime, those prisoners will be held in isolation cells. For Newzroom Afrika, on Channel 405, I'm Sindisiwe Twala in Johannesburg.
Now, on the back of that package, over 16,000 inmates have so far been tested for the coronavirus. But prisoners' rights activist Miles Bhundu says inmates should be released in order to avoid the spread and to save on government spending. He joins us on the line right now. Miles, thank you so much for your time and thank you for joining us on Weekend Dawn. Let's talk about the levels of overcrowding at the Johannesburg Correctional Center specifically. How many beds are in one cell and how many people are actually occupying these cells?
Well, thank you very much for having me. Let's start here. You see, the South African Prisoners Organization for Human Rights wants to extend its heartfelt and deepest condolences of a prisoner that died, Mr. Richard Maseko, at Groentein Prison on the 4th of this month. And the Department of Correctional Services will have to take us and everybody into their confidence and tell us exactly what was the cause of the death of that particular Mr. Maseko, because we are not saying he died of COVID-19. We are not qualified to do that. We don't have the brains to do that. And the Department of Correctional Services has, of course, denied that, and they also are not qualified to do that until such time a post-mortem done by an independent pathologist must tell us that. And we are, in fact, very worried because this inmate died during the course of the late hours of the night, and prisoners tried very hard to get attention from the authorities, and they delayed, they took their time, they came to the cell, and they couldn't remove him, and all sort of things were said. It is well publicized, and we want, in fact, the Department of Correctional Services to go and sympathize with the relatives of the deceased and also make a contribution towards a dignified send away of the late Mr. Richard Maseko, taking from a leave which were given to us by President Nelson Mandela, may soul rest in peace, who said the way the society treats its prisoners is one of the sharpest reflection of its character, quote unquote. Let's get back to your question.
Miles, before we move on, Miles, I mean, since seeing you talking about the Groenprint prisoner who died in the Free State, I just want to ask, do you have an idea on when the autopsy will actually be released so that we can confirm whether it is a COVID-19 death or not? And I like the fact that you're saying that you cannot confirm it and you want an independent coroner to obviously conduct this autopsy. Do we have an idea on when we'll receive this autopsy report?
You guys could take it up because you've got the financial muscle, you've got the brains, you've got the manpower, and you've got the authority to do that. They would never, ever tell us, but they have confirmed the death. They would never give us. We don't have any relationship with the Department of Correctional Services, despite the fact that we have been screaming and yelling and moaning for the past 28 years after my imprisonment. And that is what makes us breathe under the collar, because we are under the impression that for the past 25 years plus, there are still correctional officers that want to run that institution like the Afrikaners did. You know, in the past it was run like a volksstaatjie, where everything belongs to the correctional officers, from the prisoner and the infrastructure. 25 years down the line, we get the impression that they are working very hard to run it like a glorified Bantu stand. And you guys, we must not allow it. Taxpayers and democratic South Africans and social justice-loving people must not allow it. They are not going to let us know about what the outcome or the result was of the causes, but you guys can do that because you can set your lawyers upon them.
All right, now let's move on to the Johannesburg Correctional Center, which is obviously known as Sun City Prison. How bad is the overcrowding there? And in terms of beds, how many beds are in a room and how many prisoners are in that room, each room?
Well, prisoners sleep on what is called scuffles. Scuffles is one bed on top of the other bed. Like a bunk bed? You get 3 beds. You get one bed that's got 2 other beds on top of it. Okay? The overcrowding is chronic, and it is a fallacy that after 25 years we're still moaning and want to talk about overcrowding in South African prisons, whereas between 2010 and 2013 there were 2 judgments called the Van Vuuren and Van Wyk judgments, and those judgments were taken with the intention by high courts that the Department of Correctional Services had a strategy to manage, regulate, control, and if need be, make sure that overcrowding is well managed. And those judgments has not been touched, let alone the latest judgment of Opa Bata that he went to the Constitutional Court. He won his case with flying colors. They are still struggling to implement the Opa Bata judgment. I'm not talking about the latest special remission that was granted by the President, called the special remission by presidential special remission. I'm not talking about that. They are still struggling to implement that sort of judgment, and the prisons remain overcrowded, and it's becoming worse by the day. And the Department of Correctional Services needs people with resources. We don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the finances. And all the organizations that used to come on air every day, every now and then, when it suits them, they are all pigeonholed by themselves. They are all in isolation. They are in quarantine. They are in confinement. Self-inflicted and self-created. They are not saying anything.
Miles, I'm sorry to interject. We really are running out of time, but I'd like to just get a consensus of how you feel in terms of keeping a healthy nutrition and a healthy immune system within the prison system, because we're all dealing with a COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think would be the solution for the Ministry of Justice to curb or flatten the curve of the pandemic of COVID-19 within the prisons? In 1 minute, please.
Well, the Minister of Correctional Services and Justice, Honorable Mr. Lamola, needs to first keep quiet, sit down, listen, take notes, and go and do research on the notes, come back and respond to the notes. 1, they need to go to the Van Vuuren, Van Wyk, PASA judgment and make it a point that it gets implemented as soon as possible, and also make sure that the latest presidential pardon given by prisoners, that it gets implemented, monitored, evaluated, and make sure that the prison population is flowing. It is not
All right, Miles Bhundu, thank you so much for your time.